Hey, how's it going, everybody? I'm Ben from Universal Audio, and welcome back to Luna Office Hours Happy Hour Friday, May 1st. This year is just it's screaming by, but the good thing for you guys and for us is that Luna is still out, still available. You can go download it now if you haven't already. And I've brought along the gang. What up? We got Matt, we got Drew, we got Tom. How you guys doing
Hello.
today?
What's going on?
Hello, happy
Doing
Friday,
great.
everybody.
Happy Friday. It's the weekend. Nearly.
Nearly close enough.
For me, it is. I'm a lot closer than you guys.
Yeah, exactly.
You're pretty much there. Yeah. I don't have a drink. It's Friday night and I didn't make a drink. What are we doing?
Yeah, all right.
Unbelievable. So, as you guys, since we don't have any special guests, that means that we're gonna have a special Q&A. Ask your questions in the chat. We'll bring a bunch of them up on air and try to help you all out. Make sure you're having fun and being successful inside of Luna. But we've also we did see some of the comments coming through on yesterday's stream that we didn't quite get a chance to address while we were hanging out with Greaves. And so the one that I remember came in right at the end of the broadcast. Someone was asking about vocal comping and being able to comp inside of Luna, which we've kind of covered it once or twice in little bits and pieces. But it would be great to just like put a nail in the coffin and really like answer that question for good. The best because there's not only one way to comp in Luna either. There's a couple of different ways, and it really depends on what you're trying to achieve and how just how you prefer to have your tracks comped. So actually, Drew, I think you've got an example kind of prepped up for that, right?
Yeah, I got a couple little examples here. Let me share my screen.
Awesome.
Switch over. What I've got is I've got just two simple examples. No need for even audio here. It's just a visual thing here. And I've got some multi-track drums up here at the top, and then I have a vocal one here. One of the key things with comping multi-track stuff is that you're going to want to take advantage of selection grouping, which is primarily for the mix window, although it does apply here. So for example, in this let me select my drums here, and then going to make them a little bit bigger so we can start to see our versions. And if you're not familiar with versions, this guy right here is where you can bring them out, right? This is the graphically where you show that sort of little pane there.
Nice.
And you can see you can create new ones, you can duplicate, you can rename, and you can trash them. So I have a little pre-prepared example here where as if we had done some drums. And so with all of my drums selected, and this is the key thing, it relies on that selection grouping, especially with multi-track material. You want to make sure that they stay in sync. You don't want to, you don't want your versions to fall out of sync. It could get a little bit crazy from there. So making sure that they're selected. And we have some familiar shortcuts here, shift and up and down arrow. So shift and up and down arrow is how you're going to cycle through your various versions there. And if I wanted to do a comp, this is one of the things where a little trick you can use for the selection grouping is, let's say I come in and I figure out that this is the part I want. If I click and drag with the mouse, you'll notice that I create the selections as well. So I'm selecting the tracks while selecting the audio at the same time.
So your track selection and your timeline selection, they follow each other. They're linked together, right?
Yeah, right. That's super, super handy, super helpful. And it's a familiar, workflow that I'm familiar with it and use it quite often. And so even with these things, so if I needed to make a selection, I could come in here and shift click, make an adjustment, right? I could turn off my snap. I could come in here and if I add shift, I can get in that selection really good. I can zoom in with T. I can come over and also again shift click to making sure that I'm really precise. Left and right arrows allow me to toggle between the edges of the selection. And once I have the exact part I want, I can just hit C for copy. And if I wanted to, let's say you can either comp to a new playlist, which I could do with Control / I could create a new playlist, right? Or you could comp to an existing playlist. So if I copied from here, let's just say I could say new playlist and then V to paste.
Yep.
And so now I've copied that little snippet there, shift up and down arrow to continue on through your various, takes.
Well, and a good method building on what you just showed there. Like, so say you just made that comp that you did there. If you want to then, grab from a different playlist what's going to the right, if you do shift and drag, if you take the left side of your selection, you can actually bring that over and then overlap to your next edit point, which can be really helpful if you want your edits to line up one after the other. Yep.
Oh, right. Yeah. I think I know what you're talking
So
about.
yeah, so you can grab the left side and drag it all the way to the right, and now you're making your selection to the next side of it. Yep, just
Oh, I
like
see.
that.
Yeah, gotcha. Yeah. That makes that ensures that you're getting that really a tight edit. So as you edit on each transient, you're gonna land in the right places and save yourself some trimming up that you'd have to do later.
And then, so how does tab to transient work when you're in selection grouping and doing edits like this?
Yeah, so it would, it would apply here. So let's say I have this selection and I wanted to continue that selection. Let's say, and if I hold down Shift and Tab forward, it's going to add to that selection.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say I wanted to go till after this fill. I might come up here and then tab right up, or let's say I want to go to this kick drum. I'm going to tab right up to that kick drum.
Nice.
If I add Option, I could go the opposite way. So Option Shift Tab would take me backwards. Which would allow me to select, to the previous transients. And let's say I wanted to get right on, you can tell it's pretty sensitive. It's getting all of those, in multi-track environments, you might have a fair number of transients. So in this case, I'm right there would be that selection. So I can make a really tight selection with, tab and shift tab and tab to transient.
Exactly. And a cool thing to know about this too is say, exactly what you're just showing there, Drew. You can actually you could do your tab to transient based on just one track. So if you start your selection just on, say, the kick in track, you're getting a very precise measurement of your kick transients and, going downbeat to downbeat or snare drum to snare drum. Yeah, and then tell people how you're doing this. How are you expanding that selection downwards?
So yeah, that's a great shortcut there, Ben. So like if, I'm doing tab on the kick drum and then shift tab to select, which is very precise based on the kick drum, and then shift semicolon and and P key. And if you do these without shift, it moves the selection.
Yep.
But if you with the addition of shift, it's adding to your selection.
Mm-hmm.
So, so that's a great way of doing that based on the kick. But then you can see it's very tight on the transient of the kick.
Yeah. Well, and this is the big thing. I think a lot of people have, selection grouping is kind of a new thing to a lot of people, and kind of the mashup of selection grouping with tab to transient, all these inversions and play, like it's a lot of different things kind of all coming at once. So I know we've had a couple of our artists who've gotten back to us like asking this exact question, like how do I do multi-track drum comping? And it does take a minute to get used to how selection grouping works, because it's not a permanent persistent group. So it's a lot of remembering the shift key is kind of the key to it, right? Like shift anything to be able to change your selection or add or subtract tracks to it. That's one of the key things to remember for this workflow. But then, like as you mentioned, it's as easy, for the actual comping part of comping, it's as easy as making a selection for what you want to keep, hitting the C key, and then either using the shift up or down arrow to move around playlists, or control / to create a new playlist, or what I do a lot of times, especially for drums or a lot of like these performance based ones, is that a lot of times you have a take that you're going to use for majority of your song, or like it's basically this take, but then I just need to grab a few sections where he messed up to fly in something else. So to do that, you just make a duplicate version of of the one that you want, and it's really helpful to kind of rename these sometimes. Like unless you're good at holding numbers in your head and remembering that, cool, V4 is going to be my comp. Yeah. You can actually get in there and just rename. You can rename
so let's
that
say
one.
Yeah, so let's say that version 1 is the one that I'm going to primarily use. I'm going to do, as Ben said, I'm going to hit duplicate, and you'll see that created it as 5, and then I'm just going to double click on that, and I would just say just label 5 as comp.
Yeah.
Right. So V5, version 5 is the comp, and that way you never leave yourself out. You can always go back to the previous ones, and of course I didn't actually do that this time, but you get the idea. So yeah, that's super important. I always encourage people to always, never back yourself into a corner. Don't edit yourself into a corner. It's never a good idea. It's never a good feeling. It's right. Because I know the way clients work, they'll have you do something and they'll say, try this, try that, try this, try that. And that could be 10 minutes. It could be an hour. It could be 2 weeks. And then at the end of it, they'll go, you know what? Just put it back.
Yeah, exactly. Actually it was better the way it was.
It's better the way it was.
Yeah. So. In the version, there's no, as far as I know, correct me if I'm wrong, there's no limit to the number of versions in Luna?
I've never found one. Yeah, I've not found a limit.
I guess I haven't tried going above 99. So there.
Yeah. I guess neither have I.
If someone out there has done more than 99 playlists, I feel sorry
Put
for
in the chat.
Exactly. Put in the chat. Let us know that
chat.
it works, but also like I want to know some context around that. Like, what were you doing 99 times over and over again?
Yeah. And then the second example I had prepped up was just a simple little vocal example. This is this track here is one where I've got, in this case I do have 10, I do have 10 vocal performances.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a true, this was in this example, we had lots of full takes, but then at some point, you eventually start to get the snippets that you don't have yet and all that. And in this case, we would have a very similar kind of a workflow where I can just come up here and I can just control, backslash or / actually, and make a new one, and then just start grabbing the parts that you want, and doing that. That same exact
C
workflow.
shift up V, C shift up V.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's great. And
shift up and down arrow, yeah.
Shift up and down arrow, yep.
Yeah.
Well, and another one, if you don't mind showing this one off too, Drew, is for like vocal comp. I know a lot of people kind of like to do the dual track sort of comping, where where you're dedicating a track to being your record, and a lot of pop guys really like this workflow because you kind of have a track that's just your dedicated recording channel. You just leave it in record, you keep on using versions, even as you move from part to part or start doing stacking background vocals, etc. You just use one track as your spot, and then you're making new vocal tracks below that one that you're then just quickly either copying or cutting off of your main track and pasting it down into your other ones.
Yeah, so in that kind of a scenario, this first track that I had previously made would be that record track, right, where you'd have a bunch of stuff, you'd have things on it, and then you'd have your comp below it, and even you might even have things like plugins on there.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see if I can do this quickly enough. Probably not. Well, let's just do this. So let's say you had that on your record track, on your destination track, and then you're recording onto here, as Ben said, and then you're jamming stuff down to here. And when it comes time to do another one, we have that quick shortcut for option drag. So if I option drag this track, it will make a copy of it. If I pull this down here, it'll make a copy of that track with that plugin that I had on there, and I can just get rid of that stuff, and then come up here, grab a different slice from a different take over here, and pull that down onto the next track, C down, V, or like you had said, if you don't want to leave it, you can do cut instead of copy, move it down and put it onto that track, and now it's got that. And then again, if I want to do it again, option drag to make a copy, and I got another one that I can continue to just sort of do that process too. So very quickly, you could be pounding on that record track, copying and jamming on that down to the other tracks.
Yeah, and it's super helpful, especially like I mentioned, if you're doing pop or if you're doing anything where you're doing a lot of vocal stacks, it can be really efficient. And obviously Luna, there's a lot of advantages to like the fact that you can. If you duplicate those tracks, your input settings are also carried along with that. So you could just record enable each one and kind of be tracking in the track it's going to go to. But when you're working with a vocalist and you just want to dedicate that one track with all the sauce that they want, but then say you want different settings, or you want to route together a quad worth of vocals into a bus and have that processing as they're listening back. It can be really helpful to create a bunch of vocal stack tracks that you're just kind of dragging, either cutting and pasting, or you can separate and drag. There's a ton of different ways to get down there. But yeah, for anyone that's not coming to Luna out of Pro Tools, the killer shortcuts for comping that you have to know are X, C, and V, and you don't need to add command to these. When you're working on the timeline view, it's single button shortcuts of X, C, and V. That's your cut, copy, and paste, and then semicolon and P. Those are the ones that'll move your selection up and down through the tracks. Tab for tab to transient, option tab to transient backwards. Adding shift to any of this stuff adds to it. And then for controlling your playlist, you got control / to make a new playlist, control command / to make a duplicate playlist. And then
I'm doing them as you say them.
Look at that, dude. This is narrating in real time. Exactly. And then selection grouping, guys, like Drew showed on the drum example. Simply having all of your tracks selected enables the grouping of those tracks. And then, as you'll notice, like sometimes if you click on just one track, that selection group will disappear because it's all contextual controls. It's whatever you were last touching is what will be edited upon. So you can either click and drag like that, or you can, as we showed you, like make your selection on one of the tracks, and then using the P or semicolon keys, shift that selection up and down through the tracks to get what you want.
Yep.
I use that for putting samples in with real drums as well.
Yep. That's a good one.
So just pick up a kick sample and then go along and paste it in, tab into transient and dropping down, pasting it on the track below.
Yeah, there's a lot of good and powerful editing utility that you can get out of just kind of knowing those single key commands are really huge. So
in fact, they work on MIDI as well, by the way. To be able to go up and down tracks and copy MIDI regions as well is amazing.
Yep.
Nice. And I see a question. The first question that always comes up when we talk about editing drums: can you quantize audio in Luna yet?
Not yet.
Not yet. You can quantize MIDI. You can warp audio, so you can do all the tricks that we were just showing you. You can warp, and you can move downbeats and adjust. And you can do those across multiple tracks, right, guys?
They won't. You can't use selection grouping to move warps.
Gotcha.
That'll have to wait for like true edit groups. But obviously all tracks that are in tempo mode will respond to tempo changes. So in that way, you can do a form of audio. It's not really audio quantized because it's not going down to the beat level, and you can't do grooves and stuff like that. But it will warp the audio across multiple tracks in response to the timeline. So you'd
sort of tighten the bootlaces on a drum performance maybe, but not
exactly
redesign the shoe.
Right, exactly.
Right now.
Yeah.
Well, and the cool part, this is something that we've talked about a bunch internally for things like this features. I know a lot of people are like myself. Like I love Beat Detective and Pro Tools, or I love the warping in Ableton. The cool thing about Luna is that you can interoperate with other workstations to do the things that you need to do. So I've already heard of a lot of users and some of our artists who are they're saying like, I love the sound of Luna. I love the way tracking in it works. So what they're doing is they're using Luna to track, and then exporting all their tracks out of Luna, taking it to Pro Tools or Ableton to do their production and their editing and do work in the environment that they're comfortable for that, and then they're coming back to Luna to mix it to be able to have the tape and analog summing, the Neve summing kind of integrated into their mixes. So this is it's 2020, man. You can be workstation fluid these days. You don't have to just stick with one or the other, which is it's really cool. All right. So hopefully that cover, I think that to me felt like a really comprehensive way to talk about comping.
Did I miss anything, guys? Anything that you guys want to add? I think we covered it, right?
I think you covered it, man.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. Awesome.
Nice. Awesome, guys. Cool. So one of the other segments that we've kind of had on deck here for a little bit that Tom prepared is the kind of showing people how to use Stylus RMX along with inside of Luna. We talked about I think it was like last week or the week before we got to talk about Machina, and we got to talk about Superior Drummer and kind of show people some tips for working in those.
And I was shamed into owning Superior Drummer 2, so I now own Superior Drummer 3. Thank you very much. I was shamed into buying it, so
good
everybody
work,
can
good work,
rest assured that I now have Superior Drummer 3. Thank you.
Yeah,
loving it.
Carry on.
So, do you want me to bring this up, Ben?
Yeah, go for it. Oh, and Danielle, just real quick, she had a good question here talking about drummers who ebb and flow too much, and with on a no click track session, there is identify beat inside of Luna, so you can go in and you can make the timeline inside of Luna follow what your drummers, and especially if you're recording without a click, you can still get the advantage of having things gridded up.
You can build a tempo map, with that.
Drew, actually, since you got drums on your screen, do you mind just sharing real quick and showing people how to map that?
Yeah. So the idea here is that I think this probably was done to a click, but the concept is behind this is pretty straightforward. As far as you want to start by identifying setting bar 1. So you're basically, so in my case, I would probably I would want to tab to that first kick drum.
Yep.
And let's just say that's the beginning of the song, and I'm going to come up here and I'm going to do set bar 1. You'll notice this doesn't have a key command, so you're going to want to do it in the menu. It's not something you do very often, probably not worthy of a key command.
It's like, hopefully you only have to do it once.
Yeah, right. The idea is bar 1. It's kind of in the name, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, so I created that. I set that as the bar 1. And then in this case, maybe I would just tab up to here and say that, and then I would come up here, and this one does have one, Option Command I. So I'm going to come up here and Option Command I, and I'm going to tell, that's basically the bar position. And then I would do the same thing here. And you can see what Luna's doing here. It is calculating the tempo based on the performance. So I just can do that basically. I could do that for the entire song. And I'm just kind of doing this crudely. But as you can see, and I didn't do it right, but you get the idea.
Yeah.
I've built a tempo map, and I now have the ability to, I can make this a little bigger if I wanted to see that. And you can see this was, I think, done to a click. So the drummer's just drifting a little bit here and there, But the cool thing about this, and this is where we get to this sort of quasi, quantizing, because if I make all of these tracks tempo mode, in tempo mode, then I can come up here and I could take this part and just change the tempo of that, and these guys would,
the drums will now follow that.
Yeah. And again, this is something that if you're not used to it, nothing visually is changing, even though I've slowed the tempo down, or I've sped it up because of Luna's tempo based timeline. So it's not like I've changed the time aspect of it, but I have changed the tempo. And of course I could do the entire song if I wanted to make a selection and move the entire thing up and down. So really so it's not quantized, it's not quite quantizing, but it kind of sort of is in a weird sort of way.
Yeah, that's how I sort of describe like pulling up the bootlaces a little bit. Like if you've got a drummer who's super wobbly and they're wobbling over bars, and you just want to like just put the shoes on a little bit tighter, then you could effectively go in there and just flatten out the variation or delete it, right?
Yeah, so so in fact, if that's what I did, if I did this enough, like let's just pretend I did this for the entire song, and if all of these are in tempo mode, when I click and drag to do that and I hit delete, I have now warped all of the tracks in tempo mode to, and again, it's not down to the beat level, but it's just sort of, to the bar level, sort of a bar level of quantization, I guess you could say.
Yeah. And especially if you're in razor blade mode, for the drums there, then it's more like effectively going along, which is actually how I edit drums a lot anyway. And making a slice, like I think taking individual hits really quickly, if you're used to that type of old school workflow, I'm sure Ben and Drew, you'll agree with this. Like if you do that many crossfades and that many slices for every single kick and snare and every single hat, you do kind of hear it when you listen back to the drums when they've been quantized as such, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
So I ended up over time just kind of treating it more like tape splicing anyway, where I would go in and just go, okay, that's definitely wonky here, or that kick drum is late compared to these 4 bars. So I'm going to just butt up those 2 sections to get that one really obviously late bit out of kind of being late, back in time, but then leave it being organic in between the beats anyway, like beat 2, 3, 4 can wobble a bit. So this is like a great way of doing that. Without, it's just that people are if you're looking for like a multi-slice drum group where you actually see it move all the audio and slice it up and move it for you, it doesn't seem to be doing anything, but it can.
But it's actually doing it. Yeah, it's one of those weird counterintuitive things, because the timeline of Luna is tempo based. So it's always going to follow bars and beats. That's always what you're going to see represented. So when you make tempo changes, you don't see the audio move, but it's moving.
Yeah, that took me a little bit getting used to, but now it makes perfect sense. 100 bars is 100 bars, regardless of the tempo. So it conceptually totally makes sense. But
this is one where Connor showed it to me. I was like, I get it now. We needed him.
Right. Oh man, it's cool. I saw a comment come in here, Scott, talking about how you recorded vocals using Varispeed, inspired by Jamie Liddell. That's so good to see, and I'm gonna take a screenshot of that and pass it along to him, because that was such a cool session to see. See a very weird and different way of working, but it's so inspiring at the same time.
None of that seemed like it should have worked or sounded good at all, and yet it was all super cool. I don't know. It didn't make any sense to me, but it was awesome.
All right,
Yeah,
enough stalling here. We get last time Tom got cut off by time, so I'm not gonna let that happen again. I want to see I want to see this RMX trick, because it's not just about the MIDI syncing part of it. That's easy, but the coolness was what you were describing afterwards of how you manipulate the MIDI once you got it in there.
Yeah, this is cool.
I mean, it's kind of just an old school stealing grooves with MIDI, really. But let me just, can you see my screen all right?
Yep.
Cool. So I'm just going to use the Shift Command N, make a new instrument track here. So we're going to do this, but I'm going to add Stylus RMX in here. So do that. We could have done Shift Command I, but that would have automatically put shape on there. So I'll do it this way. So like people are probably familiar with this, but you have your menu. You can browse, for example, the core library and the expander libraries. Now, back in the day, I actually bought a lot of the expander libraries on I think they were like Akai CD-ROMs, actually, strangely, which I've been trying to read some of my old Akai discs recently, and nothing will read them anymore. So there's like a few translator things you can buy, but so it's cool that they've put them inside RMX.
Like, didn't they write their CDs backwards or something like that? Like, wasn't there like a special authoring method for those that kept them from being readable on regular CD-ROMs?
Probably. I had all sorts of discs in the like mid 90s where you'd even get little dots in the disc, like somebody drilled a couple of holes in there. So if your CD drive tried to read it, it would kind of like it would corrupt the data. There was all sorts of like, people don't know how easy they've got it. Downloading a zip file these days. What are you talking about? Yeah. But I remember I grabbed this one, this retro funk one back in the day, and what I liked about it was that it had all these drummers that were session drummers playing all these like really traditional grooves. So you might have. As soon as we hit host sync here, we could like preview up a groove, pick any type of old school drum sound, right? So you should be hearing that.
Yep.
And they're all going to match my session tempo, which is strangely a 91.5 BPM. Loving it. Because the half is really important, people.
It's super important.
Yeah. But what I love is you can come down here and just preview your different loops, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is cool, but I think I like this one for now. And what I like about it is you've got cool patterns, you got some fill bars, there's some tom fills and stuff, and they all have human swing, right?
Yeah.
So once you've picked something you like, you can just drag and drop this thing in here and create a MIDI version of that. So let's say, in fact, actually, I want to take the main beat here, so let's get rid of this one. This one there. So, just drag and drop, and we've got that groove. So I'm going to leave Stylus over there for a sec, and we'll just get into the MIDI.
And so right now, the way you dragged and dropped it into Luna, it created a new track. So right now, the only thing that's on that track is that MIDI data. That the Stylus is still up on your instrument track. So you can either drag, if you wanted to just hear that loop and have it sync up with your session, you would just you would turn off host sync, and then you would move that MIDI clip up into the right MIDI track, and it would play back as expected.
Exactly. Yeah. It's kind of nice actually, because what I'm going to show effectively is like you could go through here and take all these grooves. They all have completely different sounds, right? And some of the sounds might be dated, but the groove is really great, and it's got human feel in it. They're not on grid; they're sort of off grid a bit and played by somebody. So you could go, I love this one that's like 90 whatever BPM and a bunch of other stuff, and just drag them in and keep them on these source tracks so you can see which ones you took. And then if you want to take a section of that loop, like I just want the fill, for example, you could just take that bit, do what Drew was doing effectively with Audio C and paste it up, and then you just got that lurking. But what I wanted to show was like if we took the whole thing, I will get rid of that for now. Then we've got this MIDI clip.
Tom, what you're saying right there is you could actually, like, in a weird sort of way, you're like extracting grooves out of different loops and kind of making them your own too. Like that was, you did that very quickly, but that's actually a really cool thing to be able to kind of pull out that feel and all that vibe and like make your own part out of it, right?
Yeah. So I always I like the idea of loops, and I think a lot of people will go here and you'll find one and let it play and leave the instrument running, and you're like, oh, there's a cool groove, and you'll start writing to it and things. But I always wanted to take the feel of a drummer playing like a cool groove for the verse, and then take a really nice tom fill from a different type of loop. But of course, it's really hard to do it with audio loops because the sounds are different, and so it's just like sort of like almost like a dual personality Jekyll and Hyde fill section. And for certain styles of music that works, where you've got like a sound and then a random fill that just comes over the top. But in like a lot of music, you kind of want to have the same drum sound. So the MIDI to me is like one of the most useful bits. So what I've started doing, especially with versions as well, is let's say, well, these are relatively repetitious. So I'm going to just give myself a small section to work on, right? But we're in here, and that's on the stylus track. And as Ben said, just to pull it up here, turning off host sync as well. Now, basically, that MIDI will play. So what's going on here? 1 sec.
Oh, because you dropped in a loop and then you changed the sound, so
Oh,
now
I
it's
changed
triggering
the
a different.
sound.
It's changing, yeah, which is a cool.
There you
I've
go.
used that trick a lot of times, where like you pull up one for the feel and another for the samples, and you get, and it's kind of goes in line with what you're showing off here.
Some happy accidents can happen that way.
Exactly.
Yeah. I remember I did a drum and bass thing where I had like it sounded like 5 drummers going at each other because it just all washed over each other in the same way. So we're back to that loop. And so what's cool is that, I'll maybe call this playlist the original or this version. And I'm going to copy the whole thing, and we'll create a new one here. And I'm just going to call this kicks, right?
Yeah.
So we'll paste in that MIDI. This is a kick. That's not. So I'm going to delete it. That's a kick. That's not.
So how are you going from note to note like that? That seems really cool.
So this is where the arrow keys come in. So obviously we can expand the MIDI clip with E, and we can see every note that we want to work on here, right?
Yeah. Well, you hit E with one note selected, so it blew up that one note. Because E will always follow whatever you have selected. So select the whole clip. There we go.
So then you can move the notes up with up and down arrow, which is what I will use eventually. But with left and right arrow, we can just go across every note in the section.
Nice.
Yeah. So that's a hi-hat. Don't need another one. Snare. Kick.
And some of you might be saying, wow, this seems, Tom's working here. Yeah, he is. It's called work, right? It's got, like, you want to make it your own, right? If you just want to hit loop, and if you just want to have a loop and just hit and go, that's fine too. But like what Tom's doing is really like sort of taking things and sort of making them his own in a really cool way.
That's that. And also you can modernize this, like a really old school loop, but we can modernize it. And I want to show just using the shape kits to basically take all this stuff. So if we then use up and down arrow to put all these kicks down onto a note, it doesn't really matter which one, but just all of them. And you can make that faster by holding down shift and do up down arrow to jump an octave. So that's going to make it much quicker to move. And then you start throwing in the left and right arrows as well to select the notes. And it doesn't take you long to put all the kicks right here.
Yep.
I can consolidate that if I want to, or in fact, let's undo that and we'll call this in a sec, we'll call it kicks. I'll move it out. But for now, I'll leave that on there. Let's do another one and call this one snares or snare or whatever, and paste back in the original. So yeah, it takes a little minute, but if you know what you're doing, and you can go pretty quick.
Well, yeah, especially having the arrow keys to just go from clip. Yeah, I remember I used to do this trick in Pro Tools when I was using RMX all the time as well, and I remember doing this by hand and go select a note, like I'd have to drag a box over the note to hear the audition of it every time. So yeah, this is already faster and easier than I remember doing this trick.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, the arrows alone are the one, so that's all the snares. I mean, it didn't take me long, right, when we were sort of chatting. So we do the same thing. Let's just stick them down, stick them there. So again, using that shift key to jump the octave, and obviously if you have shift still selected, you can do multiple notes. So if you've got notes that are on the same note, you can jump them around really quickly. Yeah. So it's just a really neat kind of way of like grabbing stuff, which I like, because I'm not having to worry about the mouse right now.
Yep. And you're not accidentally shifting any note, because the thing that you're trying to preserve here is the groove. Like,
yeah, exactly.
The whole point is to leave these notes exactly where they lie, to get the feel. You're getting velocity, you're getting timing info.
If you were in grid mode in another workstation, that would be you would be shifting those notes to the grid as you selected them.
It's these offsets. This is the magic right here, because you could obviously play, if you've got a keyboard or some pads, you can play your drums in, but these are expert session drummers, and they've played these really nice pocketed drums. So we've done that.
It's actually the off gridness is what you're looking for here, because that's where the feel is. And if you, even in Luna, like if you have snap mode on, when you go to drag those around, it's gonna try to help you out by, hey, you're playing with a note that's not on the grid, let me help you out and put it on the grid. Whereas doing just the arrow keys, it's like preserving all of that time and velocity information.
Yep.
Yeah, totally. And so what I always used to do, and this is cool, is I actually just want a hi-hat part. So I've taken the kicks and snares out. We can see them here, right? We can play with those, and we've kept the original loop. So using versions on MIDI tracks is amazing because you can always go back and reference the original if you need to, but you can also get stuck in.
Yeah.
But one of the things I used to like doing is saying, well, that's a kick. So I'm going to use a hat. I won't use the one that's right next to it because it will sound robotic. That's another kick. So I'd find one, maybe a soft one. That. Often you just find you use the same ones, but. So it might look like it's taken a while, but it's pretty cool when you get going.
And totally worth it.
Yeah, I also have a Blue Peter. Here's one I made earlier, so it's all good. But let's just say I've done that. If I hit play for a sec, you'll hear just that one. Let's just move this back here. You're basically using MIDI to delete the kicks and snares out of that. So I've taken the hi-hat from a really great drummer without any of the like boom bap bits in it.
Yep.
And I've separated out the boom bap bits for other sounds, right?
Sick.
So let's just say, like, here's one I made earlier.
Tom's favorite saying.
Yeah, exactly.
Cooking show Tom.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah, let me just let's just undo that stuff. Wait a second. Here we go. We'll keep that there, but I did this already. So I've done these tracks.
Sneaky.
Yeah. So like, this is that loop. This is the original version of it.
Mm-hmm.
Are we hearing? Drums are muted. Here we go. Now then, two things.
So that's the
are going on
original performance with the original RMX sounds, right?
Yep.
now. Mm-hmm. Let's just make sure.
I was here. I heard that.
You were hearing that double, right?
Yeah. Yep. We.
Do you still have?
no.
Do you still have your audio movers monitoring by chance from when from our pre-setup when you were looping back yourself to yourself?
Oh, for the testing. No, it's turned off actually. Let's have a look. Let's see. Let's just mute all this stuff. There you go.
Yep.
That's clean. I think it might have been the other track. Still playing somehow.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the original loop, right? And we want to take that feel, which I've shown you how to slice up the MIDI and move the notes, put the kicks onto one note, keep a hi-hat only groove. So do the hi-hat only groove. But I also stole another loop, which is a completely different tempo, and used the same sounds to
get the little B
left
section.
a couple of little snares.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and like left one in for the end of the section. But that's what's so cool about MIDI. Then down here, I've got, say, the kick drums all pulled out. So they're all now on this note. And this is using shape. So the cool thing is we've got all these modern kits, right? We can take the feel, take a stylus loop and make it our own. No one will ever know it came from stylus. No offense to like RMX and the guys that made it, but here we go. Like modernize it with, say, some of our own drum sounds. So down here we have the rap kit, which I saw Greaves using the other night. I think you may have picked the same kick. I was laughing when I was watching you because this kick is, I mean, it's a trunk
It's
shaker,
fat.
as we call it, right?
Yeah.
So immediately we can put that kick in with that hi-hat groove. Super punchy.
Yep.
Then we got snares. So let's come in here. I've taken the snares out, and now I've done a few things. I've duplicated the notes, put a clap in with a different snare.
Mm-hmm.
You got different sounds to give it some vibe. I'm putting in like the little clap that comes in. It's
Where's
where the drummer
Where's
was
the guy
playing
going?
fills.
Hey,
Exactly.
We need that guy.
Yeah. And then taking the hi-hat groove, and I've made it, I just changed it so I've got a normal tight hat there. I'm just wondering if I'm hearing something double somehow on my rig.
That's cleaner for us now.
It's cleaner for you there.
Yeah, when it's
Yeah.
when you muted Q1.
Okay, I think there's something going on with the way we're picking up on loopback right now.
Mm-hmm.
I'll leave that muted for a sec. I can work without that if it's cleaner for you. I can just turn it up. here for a sec. Yeah, so basically you've got now like 2 hats, the original part, completely changed the drum sounds.
Yeah, but it all came from that OG feel of that one stylus loop. Yeah,
You got a drummer in the '60s playing a a modern hip hop kit.
Yeah. So I think I used some sounds from the vinyl kit in Shape here. So we've and the 12-bit kit. So we've got a nice digital kind of 12-bit bit crushy type of hi-hat. Then a really vinyl-esque snare sound with a really modern rap kind of like trunk shaker kick, right?
yep.
And we've gone from this. We haven't moved a single note in terms of timing or quantize. We've kept all that feel and groove. And I've even thrown in a different groove as well. So by the time we get to this section, we've got a completely different thing going on. Same sounds.
That's rad.
That's like polyrhythm hip hop, right? Polyrhythm rap you got going there, Tom.
What a great way of making a new groove from something that you had for years. So.
Totally. Dude, I love it.
It's just a simple thing to do with MIDI, really. But if you've got any MIDI files that have been played by somebody with like electric drums, or you've been able to, like tools like Recycle, or even, Ableton, I know you're going to show some stuff there where you can just take audio and extract it to MIDI straight away. You bring that stuff into Luna, use the editing to be able to like quickly reassign notes, go through an audition, steal stuff out of loops, combine tom fills from something completely different to.
That's what I love about it. Yeah, it's like super creative, and you've taken things and you've made them your own. Like no one, that's your thing now. Like it's like sure you've borrowed and stuff, but like you've turned it into your own thing. I think it's creative and it's super cool.
Yeah.
And as soon as you start mixing, because now they're all on separate tracks as well, being able to add, like you were saying to Greaves, Ben, being able to add processing to the kick track and the snare track, and then of course because I've got them all going to a drums bus with the Neve on there. Been able to hit spill, for example, and then like close down whatever's going there, That's the one.
Nice. Well, awesome, dude. This was super cool. I've seen people in the chat. I think we just sold a bunch of copies of Stylus RMX for our friends over at Spectrasonics.
Yeah.
No, they make good stuff. You know what you can do too, though. There's so many MIDI files on the internet that have got grooves in them that you can just repurpose by doing a bit of MIDI editing. And I think people are so quick to get into audio these days and go and chop stuff. But actually MIDI is really great for this because you can just audition loads of kicks really quickly.
Yeah.
Once it's there. So I don't think the old dog is dead yet when it comes to MIDI, right?
Good job, Tom.
That's really cool. Well, man, this is super cool. I see lots of questions coming through on the chat, but lots of people helping us out on the answers, as well as we're always in there helping you guys out as well. I see Marcelo's asking if Shape is going to be expandable with more sounds, or it is. It is not user expandable, but if you guys keep on hitting us up with the feedback that you want more sounds, they will continue to expand on it. So let us know by hitting the feedback button that you guys want even more content inside of there. Specifically, if you guys are using it and you're not finding something that you really want in there, that's even better. The more specific that you can be about that feedback and say like, hey, why isn't there a 1950s glockenspiel in there? We've got the modern Glock, but why don't we have a vintage Glock? Let us know. Those are the types of things that we want to know. So for sure. So let's see, any other good questions that have popped up while Tom was presenting that? Matt, you see anything that we should address before we jump into the next thing?
Nothing specific to what Tom was doing, just a lot of people saying how cool it was.
Hell yeah. Nice.
Oh, you're welcome. It's an old school trick, that.
Yeah, it is, right? Well, cool. So, an out-of-tune Western piano. Yeah, we need to add more out-of-tune things.
You have an LFO you can assign to pitch on certain things. Check it's available in Shape. Maybe you can do it that way.
Right? Nice. All right. Well, let me share my screen. So, I think I believe, judging by the Slack and chat reactions, I think I've coined a new term called being workstation fluid. So I personally am very workstation fluid, especially these days. So you guys have kind of seen this. I showed the session a little bit earlier this week. This is my, the quote unquote template that I've been creating for myself. That's connected to all the different instruments and gear that's here inside my studio. This is very much inspired by getting to spend some time with Butch Walker and seeing him, geeking out with him on his studio template that he was setting up. And again, the whole goal is to have any input, any source in my studio kind of easily available inside of one session, just kind of ready to go. But if you guys are eagle-eyed and you look right down here, I've got one that's labeled Ableton, and there's also one labeled Machine. What are these? Are they like hopefully you guys are all wondering to yourselves, why does Ben have tracks that are labeled other people's workstations inside of his session?
Hey Ben, why do you have other tracks in your in Luna labeled other workstations?
That's such an incredible and very topical, great question, Drew. Well, it's because so I figured out kind of a cool way of integrating Live and Luna together. So this is kind of parts of this are unique to the setup that I have, which is, I've got a couple of Apollo racks. I've also got a Twin sitting back there. So I've got a lot of I/O going on in my studio. So some of this stuff is very relevant if you've got multiple instruments and multiple inputs and outputs available. But you could also you could pull this trick off with a Twin as well. Because essentially what I'm doing is using Ableton as my arrangement, as my sequencer. So I'm playing back loops that are both audio and MIDI, instruments, just a combination of everything happening here inside of Ableton. And I'm using this as my sequencer brain. And then I'm using Luna as my tape machine. So Luna is just set up and ready to record, and it's going to record in an audio. And I know that probably the first question a lot of people are going to ask here is like, can I synchronize Ableton to Luna and have the timelines run together? The quick answer, no, you can't do that yet. But this is much more like a classic. If you were using MPC or Triton to sequence beats back in the day, this is a lot more similar to that, where you'd arrange your entire track on an MPC, and then when you get to the studio, you run it off into tape using the multiple outputs. This is that same mindset, but instead of using an MPC and an actual tape machine, I'm using Ableton and Luna. So Luna is sitting here, my Ableton track is connected to an input called the Convert AD, which is my basically the return out of a summing rig that I have. But I could also just use this using a simple line input, stereo line input on my Apollo Twin. I could use that, and by sending an output out of Ableton, it could be your line 1, 2. If you've got like a X8 or an interface with multiple outputs, this is also a great opportunity, which I discovered in making this example of. You can wire just an output to an input, and that's how you can loop it back together. And they're both using the Thunderbolt driver. So Ableton is sending out to outputs, and Luna is listening to all those outputs and then feeding my main monitor. But you could also do this with if you have the machine that I've got the MK3 that's got a built-in audio interface to it. You could also use that. You could say for my audio output, go out my machine outputs, and that's what I have wired up here inside my session on this machine track. This is the output from the physical machine, which is, essentially just a secondary audio interface. So there's a couple of different ways to accomplish the same goal, but since I titled my session appropriately, I'm spoiled with Luna and Ableton. I've split things out, and I'm actually going through my Dangerous 2-bus. This is the similar workflow that I would use for mixing in Pro Tools. So I can go out multiple outputs, and it all gets summed together and comes back into Luna. But as you can see, I've also got a few other tracks here that are input and record monitoring. So these are some of the external synths. And the way I'm kind of treating this is live. There's a couple of these MIDI tracks here. These are sending MIDI out into those instruments. Those instruments are doing their thing, and then it's coming back into my box here in Luna. So the result is I end up with a multi-track recording where a lot of the output from Ableton is getting summed together here, but then the hardware instruments are coming in on individual tracks. And part of the main reason I love this workflow is that Ableton as a sequencer, as a MIDI brain, is hands down just one of the most powerful sequencers that you can find, especially for doing loop-based stuff like this. So let me stop these loops here real quick and just show you guys. So when I hit play in Ableton now, you're gonna see I've got an instance of machine running inside of Ableton, but I've also got Ableton triggering the sync port on my Roland TR-8. So when I hit play, we should just hear some drums. There we go. And the confusing thing about doing this workflow, by the way, guys, is you have to come back to Ableton to press stop and start. I've caught myself lots of times being in Luna, wanting to stop the music, and then being like, oh yeah, you gotta. You're going back to a two window workflow in a way, but so yeah, hitting play here is triggering machine inside the box, but it's also sending MIDI beat sync out over to the Roland. And those are now coming in on individual tracks. But then, of course, I can keep everything in sync here and add in some drum loops. So again, hopefully this whole signal flow is making sense to you guys, but these drums all coming together here in one track, going to an external output, and then I'm reading the result of that external output comes back to me on this input on my Apollo rig, and that's how I'm listening to Ableton. So
Ben, to be clear, if someone wants to try this at home, you're literally physically connecting analog cables out of one device into the other, right?
Yep, exactly.
Cool.
And I know another really obvious question that you guys are probably thinking is like, can I use the Apollo? Can I use the virtual outs? Because there's you can have virtual channels built into to Luna and into console and the Apollo. A big thing to know is that at the moment, those don't have the same delay compensation that this workflow has. So if you're using those virtual channels, you'll get you'll get stuff happening out of sync. So it's not the recommended way to do this at the moment. But doing it using these actual physical outputs and inputs in all the testing I've done on this have been rock solid. And then so now I've got some this is a soft synth in here, but I'll jump over to the one that's triggering the Moog there in the back, the Sub 37. So now if I hit play on this clip, we're gonna have the drums coming through Ableton. We'll have the TR8 drum machine being synced by Ableton, and now I'm about to send MIDI out to a Moog. And so now here I can come in and add inserts, so I can follow the same workflow that I've been getting used to for tracking guitars or vocals inside of Luna. And again, these are all just adding UAD kind of processing. When it's in the orange box here, I'm still in ARM mode, so I'm getting all of these effects being added in real time. And then again, Ableton's just serving as my brain. So let's add another analog synth to that. And then of course you can add in some soft synths to that as well. Yeah, so that's essentially it. Hopefully this wasn't too confusing. It is kind of a weird workflow, but to me this makes a lot of sense to kind of use this, and especially for jamming or coming up with ideas, be able to work here in Ableton, which I'm familiar with from like a MIDI and composition, and it's got some really great synchronization tools for being able to work with external drum machines like that. And then Luna's sitting here as my console and as my tape machine. So as soon as I'm happy with this, and especially if I wanted to go over there and kind of start tweaking the knobs and kind of giving some shape to the arrangement, then the way I would do this is I would make sure that my tempos match up. So just looking over here in Ableton, I'm at 152. Come into Luna, tell it I'm at 152. I would just hit record. Just pre-roll a little bit on your tape machine, on your tape deck, and then come over here back to Ableton. As you can see, I accidentally left it in loop record there, so instead of printing down for the whole full track, it just looped it up. But that's essentially, then you could record and create your arrangement on the fly. I know a lot of guys love working with like the Ableton Push or if you got the Novation Launchpad, you can kind of dynamically build an arrangement, just record the results of it here into Luna, and then continue to add more production. So like if I wanted to add some guitars or keyboards or some vocals on top of this, I would end up with like, here's my multi-track of the beat, all recorded in, all processed, sounding the way I want it to sound already, and then I can simply come in here and start adding in more layers to it inside of Luna. So yeah, it's a pretty complex and intricate workflow, but the way it's able to integrate a lot of external and internal instruments all together, that's the real power there.
Those analog synths sound amazing.
It's like cheat codes, man. Nice. I want to save my that. Cool. Any questions coming up as I was going through there?
Well, Ben, I don't know if you want to address this. Maybe you found this in your mixing, but the idea of with Luna not having import session data or whatever, when you mix one song and you want to bring those settings into another song, right now the only thing you can really do is sort of duplicate the session and then extract, delete the audio from the package and so forth until we have that import session data. I don't know if that's something you've encountered in your mixing, if there's anything you want to say about that.
Yeah, I mean it's pretty much the way as you just described is kind of the best method for that. It can get a little bit tricky because you can but going in there you're just seeing let's do a little show and tell here.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if it was something we wanted to address or not, but
yeah, why not? So let's do it with this session here. So as you guys have no doubt noticed, your Luna sessions are one file. It's not like an Ableton project or Pro Tools where it creates a folder where everything is, you have your project files separated from your audio clips. Which in my mind is a really great way of doing it, because I can't tell you the number of times I've sent somebody an Ableton session and it's trying to find a drum loop that I had just left in my downloads folder, or likewise for Pro Tools. So Luna automatically, no matter what, if you're bringing audio in, if you're recording audio, it keeps all of that audio bundled up inside of the package, quote unquote. So you can right click on a Luna session and show package contents, and here you're just gonna see it. You're gonna see a lot of gibberish. This is not gonna be pretty, guys. Click on the audio folder, all gibberish. But to what Drew was speaking about, if say you had a template session where you accidentally recorded some audio files into it and you want to get those out, don't quote me on this, but I believe this won't totally break your session. It'll open up, it'll have a notice, it'll say like, hey, I'm missing a bunch of stuff, but then you should be able to proceed from there.
It worked. Yeah, they'll come in offline. They'll be labeled offline, and you can just delete them from the timeline.
Yeah, but it's the way that that's kind of the workaround for the moment. And the thing I know a lot of people are obviously going to quickly ask here is like, great, well, I just want to delete some of them. How do I figure out which ones are which? At the moment,
forget that. Yeah.
At the moment you can't do that. It's kind of an all or nothing type thing. But yeah, if you did need to duplicate a session and have no audio files, there's at least a way to do that as it is now. And don't tell Connor or Lev that we showed you guys that. That's some like inside baseball. It's just between you, me, us that are here today. Nice.
Thanks for doing that, Ben. I know that was, I'm glad. I wanted to. There was some questions about that in the chat, so I figured we could.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the whole point of these office hours: make sure you guys know what's what, and how the best way is to kind of pull some of this stuff off, even if it's not the ideal way to do it yet. Nice.
One thing we haven't showed, fellas, by the way, which I was chatting to a friend about earlier, and he was like mind blown when I described it, is the ability for Luna to put a track into record and then create other tracks.
Oh yeah.
Dude, the amount of stuff that you can do while recording in Luna is mind-boggling. It's a lot of stuff that you're like, you can do, like, that's possible. I remember this has happened to me a couple times where I'm just with what's possible.
Yeah, are you still up with all your synths? We could actually show it, right? You could.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's what I'm gonna pull up here. There's selection grouping getting me. So
For the people that have been on and watched like all 37 episodes, this is still like it's still on episode 37. We're going to drop a bomb.
Yep.
This is a like mind blowing feature.
we haven't shown this one yet.
I can't believe we haven't shown this one yet.
I don't think it's
Oh
come
my
up. You know, I
God.
was chatting to a friend of mine earlier who's an engineer, and he said, "Well, you haven't mentioned that yet." I was like, "Okay, let's get on."
Got to do it. All right, so I'm gonna. So I just muted the track so that way I can talk and show you guys what this is in real time. But I'll unmute one of these so that way you can hear the fact that no matter what I do. So let's take this track, this Minotaur. You guys, it's definitely working there. So I can take that track and change inserts in real time. So I can come over here and I can add some API EQ to it. There it is. So that's adding. You can add inserts in real time. If you really want to get if you really like living dangerously, you can change. Can you change inputs? You can't change inputs during record.
can
Not
drop in
one
and
of
out of
tracks
record.
in record, yeah. But if
Yeah.
you're out of record, like setting up another track, you can do it.
Yeah, you could just drop into record
So
as they go.
notice my timeline's still moving. I just did Command Shift N to make a new track. I think it may. Did it add it?
Put it at the end.
I think it's also not. There we go. New. It's being super slow. Surprise, running Zoom, OBS, Loopback, Hijack, Ableton, everything all at once. My system performance is slowing down a little bit. Shocker. All right, so this track, all right, just again, proof positive here, guys. I am still recording that arrangement. We're muted so you can hear me talk. And this is the slowest. We're bringing my computer. We're pushing its limits right now. This is. Glad we're doing this at the end of the show in case this all messes up and crashes and burns. You guys will know why. But so I just created a new track while we're still recording those other tracks, and I can come in here and I'll take the Juno, which is currently not getting any information to it. So new track, assign an input to it. Awesome. Let's take this one step further. I can drop that track into record while we are playing.
And there it went.
What? Guys,
It's crazy.
It's absolutely insane. I can take that track out of record. All the other tracks are still flowing in. I can bring it back in and record again. This is
I love this.
It's absolutely incredible the amount of if anyone's worked in any other workstation, you know that this is some black magic, crazy sorcery stuff that's happening right now. Just the fact that you can made a new track, assigned an input and output, pulled it into record, dropped it in for a second, take it back out. You can change inserts, you can change. Again, you got some things you have to unrecord enable in order to get to, such as like sends or input or output monitor. But as soon as you do them, I can take that Juno, add it to my delay bus, and now I can put it in record, and now it's sending to that delay with a slow sound that will not be apparent and easy to hear. But you guys get the point.
Amazing.
This is really special. The fact that all that happened in real time, no interruptions, no dropouts to my audio. You gotta have a little bit extra patience. As you saw, my whole system kind of went a little bit slower with that crazy.
It doesn't when you're not running like the rest of the whole thing. Like
when you're not running a
behind the
live stream
scenes.
show off of your machine at the same time, it probably works even better.
So hey
Yeah,
Ben,
yeah.
I got one. Maybe this will fall into that same category if we've not shown yet. Here's a stereo track with its two panners. If we right click, simple stereo pan.
No
yeah.
way.
Yeah. That's a big one for people who've seen that elsewhere. Like
That's a good one.
What? And so does that fold? Is it folding it down from a stereo track into a mono
Just
track
turns it
and then
into a
moving
balance. No, it turns it into a balance knob.
Hell yeah.
super useful if you want to keep it simple. And also, while you're in that menu, Drew, we've also not brought this one up, but it's a feature that may be familiar for console users. But if you've just joined the UA ecosystem, you haven't been deep diving in console, and now also new to Luna, the Copy Mix 2 feature.
Yeah, it
This
actually
is
has two
serious, right?
features. Yeah, it actually has two features because here you've got it to sends, when you right click on the pan knobs, and then if you right click on the fader, you're copying to cues. So
this
there's
is
two
huge.
two different levels of it. You know, one for the sends, which are the internal native part of Luna, and then one for the cues, which is the DSP part of Luna. So
Yeah, headphone mixes. So like that's my first thought with all of this stuff is like, you know, with what Ben's showing as well, you've got a tracking date, you know, you've got people coming in to play. When we're allowed out of lockdown, you get some drums up and you're happy with it. So you punch the drums in to record on 8 tracks or something, and you just say to the drummer, go hit some stuff, which is what I normally do. Go amuse yourself, go tune drums or whatever you want to go do. Just warm up, you know, get out of my way is pretty much what I'm saying. You know, and then you might plug in the bass DI and you start getting the sound. And I tend to like to focus on each player. Like, okay, so drums, you know, you're happy. What do you want on bass? What bass are we playing today? What compressor do you think you want to play through? You know, and if they're not that technical, then it's just like, what feel do you want? Do you want to go for a disco sound, or you want to go for something where you can feel every note under your fingertips, or like kind of mush you up a little bit? Like, what can we get away with?
Yeah.
The cool thing is being able to leave the drums going, so you've got a little offline sound check, because I find that's still the best way to check phase on drum recording, right? So you could just get them up, get them going, and then get the bass in, get a bass sound, create a bass track, punch it into record, say, okay, go in there and jam with the drummer for a sec, and then I'll do the guitar guy. And so instead of like having to do all the sort of stops and stuff that you'd normally get in a session, you're kind of just like going, and they can keep playing, and you might get 10 minutes of like great jamming that happens as you start adding people in. And of course, it's nice if you have the room prepared before people show up, but often that's not always possible, you know. And then once you've got your balance up on the faders and you're happy with what you're hearing, the ability to just go right click on the fader and copy it to cues, and boom, they all have headphone mixes, is great. And then for mixing, being able to, I didn't know you could click on the pan and then take that to
it's
it's
right click, right click, or control click.
Yeah, but so then now you've got the ability to copy a mix balance to like a pre-fade send if you want to do a parallel squash, but have control over the independence of what's in that balance. So there's just some really nice stuff hidden that we're
I guess this
revealing today on episode 37.
I don't know if we've done this one either too, the compact faders, which is kind of good for laptops, you know, the ability to make the faders little. So
yeah. Especially when you're not mixing, like if you are just writing, and you're probably going to have faders just like up or down a bit just to sort of add some sounds in, then you can just get them out of the way for sound design and stuff.
So yeah, we're still saving tidbits here, you know, all the way down to number 37.
How many episodes can we go and still show you something new? What do you reckon? Should we take bets? Are we allowed? Probably not. That's probably not a good thing to say.
Well, my hunch is we're gonna keep on learning new stuff every single week on this. And like the cool part is you know, they've already done 2 updates to Luna so far, where, you know, we went from 1.0.0 to 1.0.1 to 1.0.2. So like seeing the amount of feedback and the amount of, you know, the quick iteration that's kind of happening here, and it's really cool to see. And the fact that, you know, little tidbits, and we're still discovering things about this happening. Like we're supposed to be we're the guys who know the most about this, and yet we're all learning from each other every single time we get in here.
Yep.
And, we're all kind of pushing it to do new and different things along with you guys at home. This is super, super fun, super cool.
It's worth giving a caveat to that one, Ben, as well. That we've all been using it for months and months and months, but when we started using it in like earlier versions before public availability, there was no paper manual, because that's still being written. Like this is a genuine product in development. So you know, we're all kind of like, we've all picked up our own ways of using it just by interfacing with it without anything there. But now all you guys out there have office hours. You can come ask us questions. You've got a great manual. There's a keyboard shortcuts list, which, you know, how many of us have like memorized shortcuts by just finding them as we were using it, right?
Totally.
You know, or a new one gets added. Like, you know, another one that I don't think we've mentioned actually, Ben, before we wrap it up, is the option scroll enable, which was huge, right?
Yeah, that's a great one.
You want to show the people what you're talking about?
Yeah, let's do it.
And then also someone was asking about the small faders that Drew you dropped a little nugget there while you were doing showing something off. Yeah.
Oh, the compact faders.
Compact faders.
Good for laptops.
It's really it makes it gets a little tough to like know exactly where you're at once it's down there, but the fact that you're getting back more real estate above, and to do that, it's simply just grab that. You'll see that bar. The cursor changes a little bit, and just click and drag.
And then it's also there's a command. It's in the menus too. I can't remember which one up there, Tom.
Yeah.
Oh, there is.
Yeah, there. In the view menu, there is compact monitor faders.
Oh, great.
Nice. And Tom, so the option scroll, what should the people talk about there?
Well, so obviously we're all on laptops, I think, right now. So you have your gestural scrolling. So right now that's really useful in the mixer to be able to scroll up and down, especially when we have like the fully expanded mixer, and we can have our sends and cues all the way big, right? So that's going to take up a lot more vertical real estate on your screen, and being able to have 2-finger scroll there is great. And obviously you want it in the arrange or sort of edit timeline window so you can get around horizontally and up and down your session, right?
Yeah.
But one of the things that I love the fact that we added is if you hold down the option key, then we're now in effectively like a virtual mouse scroll mode. So now my 2-finger scroll is the faders themselves. And that's pretty cool, because this could be dialing in the frequency of an EQ, so you can shut your eyes once you've sort of picked up where you want to be, for example, and just as the right level
of scroll. Just little option scroll.
Yeah, and it's great because you pan something, and especially like Drew saying, with a simple stereo pan, very easy for you.
Much easier to pan stuff.
Yeah,
and that's that'll based on what you're hovering your mouse over. So it's whatever control you want to hover the mouse over the control, and then option scroll. And
so let's say you want your arranging and you want the absolute maximum screen real estate here, just to see all of your clips and everything you're doing. But you've got small faders here. Being able to hold down option, and now I'm mixing with like the gestural control of my trackpad and not trying to grab that thing, And then of course when it's not there, then you have the ability to scroll and not pick something up by accident. So I adore that. I think that's such a great feature for laptop users.
And just to complement this one, what's the key command for making small adjustments on knobs and faders?
Oh, okay. So say we're here and we want to do a really small ride. If we hold down shift here, then we're moving in 0.1 dB.
Yep. So shift and click, and that way, you can make bigger moves with your mouse, but smaller moves actually happen to faders, and I believe that works for a lot of the different controls, even inside plugins too.
Yeah, you can see me doing a really fine trim on the Neve there, for example, on the headroom control, that's actually stepped, but on the trim where it's variable.
Yeah, and on a related note, double clicking. If Tom double clicks on any control, you've got numeric input, so you have kind of however you want to do it. There's a way to do it.
And then option click to reset it to default.
Yep. Yeah, and because we've got the wonderful undo, you just undo it, and that's going to be wherever. Like, oh, I want to try no top end. No, I don't. And that's just amazing. And that's going to work across all of the UA plugins. And then, of course, if you have AU plugins, a lot of them may have their own undo menus within them, so you can access that if it's available. But if you're using anything in Luna or any of the UAD plugs running in it, then you can pretty much try and experiment and just peel back with the undo function, which is amazing. What I also love about the double clicking, Drew, is something that I've just started doing a bit more of lately. Is previously when you're saying other platforms and you want to pan something, I don't know whether you get number OCD. I find so many people have this problem, right? Like one side 63, one side 64, like that never made any sense to me.
You can't sleep that night. You can't sleep that night.
But it should be the same. Or even, just like 41 isn't 40. I don't know why I have a thing about round numbers. But what I'm finding in Luna is because we're not presenting that information to you. If you humans are naturally visually biased. If you go and research how humans work, like we're designed to have visual dominance. That's kind of how the brain works to, keep us alive, right? And our ears are kind of there as like a secondary sense in a way to like guide us through life. But eyes are very much the number one thing.
Yeah.
So it's really, if there's a lot of studies out there, but it's really interesting when you start seeing a lot of information, and you start getting drawn to it. What I love about Luna is it's not showing, I'm panned left, but where? Well, it doesn't really matter, does it? It's just, does it sound good? But if you really, really, really want to know, then you can get in here and type, I want to be 65 left.
Yep.
So, and I love that because it's not like giving you it if you don't want to be distracted by it, but you can still do it.
Yep. It's the best of both worlds.
And Tom, while you got your screen up here, someone asked if there's a quick way to enable or disable all plugins at once.
Ooh, that's an interesting one. If it's in a row, right? Then we've got the Apple command, I should say, to disable individuals. And if we hold down the option key, then we can do the row of, like I've just reset all those faders. We can turn those on and off.
Yep.
Same here. I could reset everything to 0.
Yep, and this will follow selection grouping as well. So, like, if you only wanted to do it to a few tracks, you could select that set of tracks, and then, if you're bypassing plugins, it'll do it there. And then on a single track, so you have 5 or 6 plugins on one track. Is there a quick way to disable all of them at the same time?
I don't know. I personally don't know.
You got to right click disable all.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, of course you do. Sorry, yeah.
Yep.
Well reminded, fellas. The other one I was going to go with is the power drag modifier.
Yep.
There's always like 2
That
ways
too.
to do it, right?
Exactly.
Yeah,
There's always 2 ways. So yeah. So show them
Let's just add a few stuff.
Exactly. Yeah.
add
Let's
a
show
few
them a
things
couple
in
different
here.
ways.
Just stick a couple of bits in, and then being able to just go power and drag down, and boom, they're all off. You know,
Yep.
that's great. And then put them back on.
Nice.
And that's what I actually do that more, because quite often for me, this is why I didn't know the full thing you were getting at there, is because I'm often doing everything on and off. Like I've put something on all my drums and I want to hear all of that horizontal row. It's rare that I'm going to take off the whole channel strip. So I don't tend to, but being able to do this and just go, I'll just wipe out the whole session.
Yeah, the fact that it's just
Just
swipe
put
it,
it back
you can kind of be gestural about it, and just put it in the power mode, and then you can click and drag, and anything that you've dragged over will be disabled.
Yeah, while this menu's up, actually, the fact that you have remove all is actually something that I will use more, because then if you've sort of like duplicated a vocal track, being able to just trash everything that was on the lead vocal, so because you want to do a different parallel effect.
Yep, it's a great way of doing it.
Yeah.
Nice.
Always learning, fellas. Always learning.
Dude, that's why honestly, it's why I love these Friday sessions where we, get to kind of hang out, show you guys some of the stuff, answer some of the questions that we've been seeing throughout the week, but then also kind of geek off in some cool ways. But most importantly, we're all just kind of sharing tips with each other and with you guys. So yeah, really, it's always fun on Fridays, man. I really enjoy these ones. Well, it's
We
cool.
gotta have a drink. Gotta have a drink next week, though.
I know.
Everybody promised to have a drink.
Guys,
It's early for you guys. It's okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Never too early.
I still have
Never too early.
my morning coffee is still sipping on it a little bit here.
It's still warm.
Exactly. That's Yeti life right there. But man, next week's gonna be a really fun week. Fab is gonna be back on Tuesday. We're gonna do another episode of the Tales from the Switch, where he's gonna be showing us in real time how he's kind of translating his mind and his mixes out of Pro Tools and over into Luna. So he's on Tuesday, I think. I believe Jakir King is coming in on Wednesday next week, and we'll be showing off the final mix of the Cass McComb session, which will be one of the first official Luna session that's available for download for all Luna users. So you'll be able to open up that session, see his mix, be able to hear the tracks, play around with all the plugins, have some fun inside of Luna with some incredibly well recorded tracks and a really beautiful song. And then on Thursday we have Terry Lewis from that one's gonna be a lot of fun. He's been working with Luna at home while we're all in lockdown, and pulling in old tracks, making some new ones. So we're gonna have a chat with him about his production workflow and how he's finding Luna so far. So yeah, it's gonna be a fun week next week. So we'll let you guys have a fantastic weekend and recharge and get in there, have some fun, make some music inside of Luna, and we'll see y'all back here on Monday.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
All right,
Good
see you
weekend,
guys.